Guys, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little demo video now here for the mouth. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Just going to reiterate some of the other things that I've said a few times now. And the first one is going to be is that, number one, get rid of your grid lines and erase them before you start doing any shading on a particular area. You can see, like me, I didn't really go and erase all my grid lines at the beginning, but before I start doing any of the shading on that particular area, I want to make sure that I lighten them up as much as possible. I realize that you might have pressed down a little hard, and if you did, they might be difficult to get rid of completely, but you still want to try to get rid of them before you start in with the shading and anything else. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to kind of, as always, work from light to dark. So what I want to do is I want to kind of get the light values and the light shading in here done first, and that way I can always come back and go a little bit darker. So what I'm going to work on right now is just a little bit of what you see in and around her mouth. I'm going to do a little bit of the cheek and the sort of contour that you see in the cheek. And at first I'm just going to put some light mark in there just to kind of create that first stage of value. And as I'm working, I'll just make it darker and darker. And that's pretty much what I'm doing for almost all of it, is start light, add your first layer of like light gray first, blend it in like I'm blending it in with my finger, and it's really just to kind of get a sort of base down on this picture. And then what I'm going to do is going to come back and slowly try to make certain parts of that just a little bit darker. And if you do it that way and you work your values in progressively, little by little, you'll find that overall you should be more successful with the finished result, and you're going to have more control over your picture. Because the worst thing you do is just kind of like come in there and color something completely black, and then you're kind of stuck with it. It won't erase well, and there's also nothing else you could do with it once you make it that dark. So I'll start with a little bit of the corner of the mouth. This is a really light area on her skin. I'm not going to put too much in there, and I'm going to focus most of my attention right now after the cheek onto the upper lip area. I've already laid out a bunch of the gray that I'm going to need over here underneath the nose, and I've already sort of finished the nose from our last video. I've put down some of the gray over here in that middle of the lip, the sort of split in the middle of the lip, and I've blended it out with my finger. Now I'm going to kind of carefully try to just make this upper lip a little darker. Now, her lips aren't really that dark in the picture at all, but you can really see the difference between her lips and the skin color. It's much lighter. So what I want to do is I don't want to outline her lips. I don't want to add like an effect on it. It's going to make it look like it's been penciled in. What I want to do is just kind of carefully create a nice edge, and that edge is just going to be like where the gray meets the sort of brighter sort of white area. So I'm really not pressing down very hard. It's not really a convenient or easy place for me to get my finger in to try to blend it in because it is so thin and light. So I'm just going to kind of drag my finger across it a little bit, and again, just add a little bit of value. I can always reshape the dark black areas behind it with the tongue. I'm going to look to try to get that dark corner of the mouth. One of the things people kind of avoid or just don't do, they don't get that last little bit of the corner of the mouth, and that really helps sort of define what the mouth's doing. And then what I'll do next is I'm going to just carefully kind of, and this is one of the few places you could do it, I'm going to establish my edge, my outline, and this is the only time where I'm really just using a heavy outline, the difference between the lips and the tongue. And I'm only able to do that because it is so dark at the very top of the mouth. You notice I did not go in and outline the top part of the lip. That I've just kind of left on its own. I've made sure to kind of outline the lower part, the in-between part. And again, that's only because the tongue is really dark. Again, I'm going to look for values everywhere I can find them. The more different shades of gray that I can find, the better. I want to make sure that the mouth and the tongue, just like in the picture, are a little bit darker than the lips themselves. That'll make the mouth sort of pop out a little bit, make the sort of details sort of stand out a little bit. So, again, I spend, and it's, for those of you at home, it's not something you're going to necessarily see, but even for those of you in class, I spend almost as much time looking at the photo as I do actually looking at my drawing. I always refer back to the photo. My photo is my information. It's the photo tells me what to do and where to do. And if I just glance at the photo and then focus on here, what you find yourself doing is making stuff up. You're just kind of drawing what you think it should look like instead of really spending the time to focus on what it actually does look like and find all the little subtle changes and nuances. Again, working in a small detail area, kind of hard to blend with your finger, but then again, if you're working on computer paper, you're really not going to be able to blend it too much anyway. And I've pretty much got the in-between open part. Now for the lower lip. Another area where I need a line to kind of help me figure out where the shading is going to go, but I really don't want to create an outline around the lips. And she's way too young to take a liner or a pencil and outline her lips or put on lipstick. So I really just want to get the effect that her lip is darker than the skin tone around it. So to do that, I'm just going to start by laying out just a little bit of value, and as usual, we put some stuff down, we blend it in, and then we come back and we try to make it a little bit darker. As I've done in the other parts of this project, you can see where I hold my pencil. I hold it real far back. I try not to press down too hard, just use the weight of my hand and my pencil, just dragging the pencil back and forth. And then for the beginning part of this, what I'll do is I'll kind of try to run my finger across the lips as if I was touching an actual face. And this is an area where even with my eraser, I can come in a little bit and kind of shape up the lips after the fact. What I don't want there to be like a hard-edged outline. You really barely see that edge in the photograph. What you do see is that the lips are a little bit darker. This side is a little bit more pronounced and a little bit darker underneath. And the part closer to the mouth and closer to the corners tends to be just a little bit darker than the middle is. Now, one of the sort of finishing touches I can try to put on in this lip would be to add that little bit of like reflected area, that shiny little spot. By adding a shiny spot, it really makes the lips look sort of, not dry and cracked, and a little more realistic. Now, before I do that, I am kind of shaping the bottom of this a little bit with my eraser. And with that, what I'll do is I'll just kind of come in and I'll erase a little tiny spot. And to make that spot kind of stand out a little bit more, what I'll do is I'll sort of make it a little bit darker around it. And that way kind of gives off the feel of being a light and reflected spot. And if you can't make it as bright as you want to, you'll always make it stand out by making the stuff around it a little bit darker. So hey.
How you doing?
I'm in the middle of a demonstration, but you can certainly give me whatever you need to give me.
Oh, I'm just trying to plan. We're going to give out cords, like with the yearbooks this year. Like honest tiny cords.
Could you message
Ria?
Yeah, just ask her how many we're supposed to have.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
So I went through this year's program, and I figured out how many of those kids were seniors.
Okay.
So I have 4.
That's it?
And then last year if you inducted any
Okay.
juniors. So
Okay.
I pulled up last year's program
Okay.
and I went through and I found all the juniors that are now seniors.
Okay.
Would you have done any the year before? Like, would you have inducted any 10th graders?
No.
Okay.
No,
So then I
it
just went
shouldn't
back
have
to
been.
last 2
It
years.
shouldn't have been. So it's the last 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do,
So how many do I have total?
it looks like 13 altogether.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll tell what's the face.
Okay. Because Lisa's probably going to send out the email soon.
Gotcha.
Because we have to have a sign-out sheet for them when they get the cords to sign to say they got it.
Okay.
So I'm just going to put together all those kids that I found for you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Alright.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry for the mild interrupt, people. I think I pretty much finished the lips. As you can see, I've shaded them, but I did not outline them, and I think that's an important thing. You can see an edge of those lips, and I've even kind of touched up that edge a little bit with my eraser to kind of make the edge stand out a little bit more. But even within that, you don't see me heavy outline around the mouth, and I think that's a very important distinction that I want to get. I really don't want to see these pictures with super dark outlines around the nose, super dark outlines around the mouth. We want to use edges, and we want to use value, bringing one value right up to the other to make things stand out. And that's the way we want to approach these things. It's the first time that you're doing this, maybe, and probably the first time you're ever drawing your face like this. So I will just reiterate that, like, listen, it's not going to be perfect, but I do want to see those basic skills getting developed over there, that you're not outlining, that you're looking for the subtle changes from one value to another, that you're trying to get different shades of gray in there. And the getting a good likeness and getting a portrait that's ultimately going to look exactly like you is something that happens with time and with age. I don't know if I did show it to you at the very beginning of this course, but I have a drawing of myself that I did when I was 19 and one that I did when I was 23. And I was significantly better at 23 than I was at 19. And a lot of you are going to be actually better than I was when I was your age. I wasn't really necessarily a really great artist when I was your age. I had to learn stuff. And I'm hoping that by the time we're done with this, you'll have learned some stuff that we can bring into the next drawing that we do. So this is the mouth that I have for right now. I have a little more work to do on the chin and the cheeks, but I'm going to save that stuff for the next demo that I do. I'm going to end this one now and give you guys plenty of time to work on those areas.